Hi everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of the day it is you're watching. As you can see, we've got another guest with us today. It's Keith Downie. Keith works for Sky Sports. I'll read out what you've got on your Twitter description of yourself, Keith. It's Northeast of England football reporter for Sky Sports News, covering the fortunes of Newcastle, Middlesbrough, Sunderland, and an event host. Now, what it doesn't say anything in there is your love of golf. I'll get back to the topic of golf, but just to explain to people how Keith and I know each other. We've known each other our whole lives. Our dads played football together for a team called Glen Park in Edinburgh, and the families have stayed close friends ever since. I think Keith, me and you have been exposed to the Stuart Robertson Football Academy a few times. So I understand how passionate you are about football. I've known about it your whole life. So as it's always been that important for you, can you just explain to us how you got into football journalism from obviously the Rangers TV stuff, the STV, and then on to Sky as you are now?
Well, I mean, ever since I was a child, since I can remember, really, all I wanted to do was be a sports reporter or presenter. And it was just a case of how you get into that. Now, I did journalism at uni, but obviously a lot of it was news. And then I got a job at a local paper in Wishaw called the Wishaw Press, which was just like this little weekly newspaper. I was a junior reporter there, a place to cut my teeth, did a couple of years there, and then moved to their sister paper, which is called the Persian Advertiser. Again, I was just doing news there as well. And I was like, how do I get into sport? I really want to get into sport. I was looking at like all these sort of sports reporters at the national tabloids in Scotland, at the Sun and the Daily Record, who were maybe just a few years older than me, and they were like getting back page exclusives, and I'm like, how do I get into that? So I just kept plugging away on the side by trying to do like extra stuff away from my news stuff. So I used to do some little bits of updates for Radio 4, and I used to do matches for the Scottish Sun newspaper. So every Saturday since the age of 18 to when I left Scotland when I was 32, I basically went to a match on a Saturday, whether that be Stranraer or Gretna or Montrose or Raith Rovers, that you were sent to every outpost known to man just to cover. And sometimes you'd come back and you'd have maybe 100 words in the paper, and it was ridiculous. But it really gave me the experience of going out and speaking to managers and going up to players and trying to get interviews with them, and just kind of gaining that confidence within yourself to be able to do that kind of thing. And when I think back now, I didn't realise it, but it really gave me a really good grounding just to give you that sort of ability to be able to find a line or find something interesting or watch a match and try and pick something out that nobody else has noticed. So I did that, and then I was still working away at the newspapers, and a job came up at vacancy came up at Setanta Sports, and it was to be the reporter for the TV channel Rangers TV. Now, obviously, I grew up as a Hearts supporter, and I was like, oh, it's not really the ideal club for me. But I thought, well, once you're working in the industry, you don't really care about. You just want an opportunity. So I was lucky enough. I went for the interview. I managed to get the job with no TV experience. I don't know. The guy who gave me a job, a guy called Colin Davison, must have just seen something in me at the time. Got the job and just basically had to learn TV on the ropes. It was basically my cameraman who taught me lots, because he'd been in the game for a while. And I remember 2 weeks into the job, we had to go to Norway to do Molde against Rangers in a it's now Europa League. It was then a UEFA Cup qualifier or first round tie. And he went out, and I had no idea how to put together a TV report. And he held my hand, pretty much did the whole thing for me, and I put my name to this thing. And I just, over the course of that next year, just kind of learned from him. And he was amazing. Like, he really taught me a lot. I mean, he was an absolute nightmare to work with. He was a difficult character. I'm sure he won't mind me saying that. He kind of knows that himself. But he just taught me a lot. And then so I did that for 3 years, and I was really lucky at my time at Rangers, because they got to the UEFA Cup final when I was there. So like, I travelled all over Europe, went to loads of different countries. I think I was the only reporter to cover every one of the 21 games as Rangers reached the UEFA Cup final, when they eventually lost to Zenit St. Petersburg. in Manchester. So I really got loads of experience traveling, doing that, and it just kind of made my mind up for me that this is what I want to do. I want to do TV rather than newspapers. Up until that stage, it had always been newspaper, and I wanted to be a writer. So I did that for 3 years, and then Setanta went bust. So we all lost our jobs. We were made redundant. I was like, what do I do now? So I just started picking up little bits of freelance, the odd game for Sky, because I'd obviously made a few contacts while I'd been at Rangers. So I'd do the odd game for Soccer Saturday for Sky if they needed someone. I did the traffic bulletins in the morning through in Glasgow for this traffic company, just anything just to basically pay my mortgage. I carried all my matches for the Sun, and luckily I'd picked up quite a lot of contacts from my time at Rangers, so I would write little pieces for the Sun with maybe one of the players, or get like an exclusive interview with a player, and because these guys kind of trusted me from my time there, so I did that. Long story short, was there at STV for 3 years. Again, it was a massive story that happened when I was there, when Rangers went into administration and then liquidation, so I was heavily involved in that. So that then kind of alerted maybe some other people to me and to STV that we were leading the way with that story. And this job came up at Sky in summer of 2013, and I applied for it. And again, like, I was lucky enough to get it. I think at that stage I had the right amount of experience from my time. 3 years at STV working in sport, 3 years at Rangers TV covering them, and also like my newspaper experience before that. And I obviously just kind of, fell into this job and was lucky enough to get it. And I've now been the North East reporter for Sky Sports News for 6.5, it'll be 7 years in September. So unbelievable. I mean, to think I've been here more than double the time I was at Rangers and more than double the time I was at STV seems unbelievable, because it only feels like I've been here for a few years. But when you're working in sport and you're working in football, time seems to move, and the seasons seem to just move very, very quickly.
To be honest, for me, watching you doing your interviews, it's actually quite nice hearing a Scottish / Edinburgh accent. So it's really good for that. Now, I'm going to go back to a bit of the golf, because you love golf. You absolutely love your golf. I know you go on holidays with your pals and play different courses around Europe. I'm going to ask you this. How did you feel when you got the call to go and cover the Open in Northern Ireland? How did you feel? Were you over the moon?
Oh yeah, I was delighted. To coin the phrase of the modern day footballer, I was absolutely buzzing. I've obviously got more and more into golf as the years have gone on. Play as much as I can. This job luckily kind of lends yourself to the opportunity to play quite a bit of golf, because you work quite a bit the weekends, and you maybe have Tuesdays or Wednesdays off or things like that, or maybe you go to do a press conference or an interview in the morning and you've got the afternoon free. So I definitely play a lot more golf these days. Got my handicap down like to a semi sort of acceptable standard. And when the call came from a boss to say, have you got 2 weeks free in July? I was like, well, yeah, what is it? Like, thinking this could be anything. So you have to say yes first. I'm like, yeah, what is it? Would you fancy going over and doing the Open? I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what the opportunity I was looking for. So yeah, I was absolutely delighted. And obviously I've done little bits of golf at STV, and I've done a few competitions for us. I've done the Irish Open twice, and I've done the Scottish Open and the Alfred Dunhill and stuff, but I hadn't actually done a major like this. So I had at STV, I had done the Open before up in St Andrews and whatnot, but this, to get the opportunity to go over and be one of only 2 reporters to cover it for us for the best part of 2 weeks was just an absolute dream for me at the time, and it lived up to that, if I'm honest.
There's a picture going around with you interviewing Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson. How did that feel to be interviewing the 2 best players in the world at the time, and what were they like, and how was it being that close to the players?
I mean, the pictures you're talking about, I think were probably only 2 of loads. I mean, if I actually had to sit down and write down all the golfers I interviewed that week, I don't know if I'd remember them all. Honestly, it just all happened. So it was such a whirlwind, and all these interviews, the ones that you mentioned, those 2, and the other ones that I can't remember, all happened in the build up to the competition starting. So obviously it started on the Thursday. We were there the previous Friday, so I was there 6 days before it started. And of course, as you know, with all these big tournaments, players arrive at different time. They want to get a couple of days practice in, some more than others. Brooks was out there, I think, 10 days before the tournament started. He decided not to play in whatever the one was the week before. I don't know if it was the Irish Open or the Scottish. I can't remember. He decided not to play in that, and he went straight out there. And I think it was on the Sunday. So as I say, it was 4 days before it started. The course, we were basically just wandering around the course trying to get to know it, because we're going to have to be talking about it for 4 days solid. And I just kind of like, in the distance, I was like, honestly, it was about 3 fairways away. And I'm looking over him, I'm thinking, I recognise that guy's walk, like the way he's walking. Like it's the way he was kind of like, and the cameraman's like, hang on, and he got the camera out and zoomed in. He goes, I think that's Koepka. And I said, that's what his walk looks like. He was, come on. So we got in the buggy and went along, and he's just like walking the course, playing a couple of balls. So we just followed him for about 3-4 holes, like literally like 15, 20 yards away. He knew we were there. He said hi to us. We just followed him. And then after about 3 holes, I thought, I'm just going to sort of pluck up the courage just to ask him here. So I said, Brooks, I know you're midway through. I said, any chance, can I just grab a quick word with you? Because obviously the players are all put up to do press conferences throughout the week. They're all scheduled in at different times. Brooks was definitely in for at least one before the tournament started. And then he would do all the stuff after his round every time. So this is like extra on top of that. And it's just me and my own. So it's obviously, it would be an exclusive, the fact that no one else is there. And the interesting story for him was his caddy is from Portrush, where the actual competition where the tournament was taking place. So he was there with the caddy 10 days advance, getting shown the course. And so he had this great inside knowledge from his caddy. His name escapes me, actually. Can't remember his name now. We actually went out for a couple of beers with him one night. It's terrible, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he was a lovely guy, really, really good guy. And he was basically just getting shown the course, so he kind of knew everything. You could see why he's the #1 player in the world, because of the extent that he was going to try and find out the course. So anyway, I just went up to him and said, Bruce, I said, can I just ask you a couple of questions? He goes, yeah, no problem, but would you mind just waiting until I'm finished? So I was like, yeah. So we just watched him play. We just walked around with him, watched him play the back nine. Played 2 balls, listened to everything he was saying to his caddy, heard all the chat. I mean, you can imagine the kind of like opportunity that was. He wasn't bothered at all. It was just us. There was no one else there. Got to the end of the 18th and had a chat. Now, his interview wasn't that great. He's not the most charismatic of guys. Whereas some of the other guys I spoke to that week were unbelievable. I mean, I was actually, do you know who I was actually really impressed with? Was Bryson DeChambeau. I caught him on the practice green. He was putting away, and he could see me kind of at the corner of his eye. And most of the golfers would wait till they're finished, and he came over and goes, hey, I just wondered, are you waiting for an interview? And I was like, yeah, I was just wondering, sorry to you. He goes, yeah, let's just do that now. What are you going to ask? And he came over midway through, and I think he probably just wanted us out of the way. But like, so we got one with him, got one, Dustin, Graham McDowell, Rory. There's so many, I can't even remember. Patrick Reed, who was actually I know he gets a bad rep, but he actually came across very well. So yeah, I mean, most of the best work I did on that trip was actually in the build-up to the tournament starting, when everyone's a little bit more relaxed and more open to doing things. Once it started, everyone's got their game face on. You can't really go up to people and grab them for interviews. You have to wait till they come in to do their press conference. So that's why they send us there early, to try and hoover up all that kind of extra material in the build-up to it starting.
Brilliant. Can you see yourself moving closer more to golf than football? I mean, commentary-wise, you and Murray can't go on forever. He's a fellow Curry High pupil. I don't know if you knew that, but yeah, he would as well. Yep. So yeah, would you consider yourself getting more into golf going forward?
I would love to, Richard. Honestly, I would love to, but there's so much competition. It's a bit like in football. Obviously, I'm the North East reporter for Sky Sports News, but like every one of our other reporters, and I think we've got 27 of them across the country, we all want to be the pitchside reporter on the Premier League games. We all want to be the guy asking the questions to Jurgen Klopp, a minute after, Liverpool have won the title, or we want to be that guy, but we're not. And I'm not saying this isn't a good job. It is. It's great for its own way, and we get a lot of exclusive stories and break stories, and we're seen in that light. But I think if you speak to most of them, they would all love that opportunity, and it's the same with the golf. We would all love to be the guy. We would all love to be the first person to speak to the golfer as he comes off, having won a competition or working at the Ryder Cup and right up close to it. I was there for Sky Sports News rather than Sky Sports, so we had a slightly different remit to what the guys at Sky Sports would. I would love to be a commentator for that, but I think there's probably a line of guys who have been doing commentating on golf for a long time that would be well ahead of me in the ranking for that.
Well, let's make sure this gets out to as many people as we can, and the big wigs that hear you saying how much you enjoy it. Right, just one more question before I do a bit of quick fire. There's a massive rivalry in between Newcastle and Sunderland in the northeast England. You've been living there for quite a while now. We up here think about the Rangers Celtic, and for us, you and me, the Hearts Hibs derbies. What is the rivalry like, and what is it like when you are living in that situation?
Well, I mean, I live in Newcastle, so that doesn't go down, and the Sunderland fans know that, so it doesn't go down too well with them. More often than not called a mag, which is short for a magpie, which isn't the nicest of terms if you're down here. There's probably similar sorts of terms used between Hearts and Hibs fans and Celtic and Rangers fans as well. But I mean, it is a very hostile rivalry. I wouldn't say it's of the same level as Celtic and Rangers, just due to the sort of religious element that goes along with that. It's not quite that, but I mean, they do hate each other. They honestly hate each other. Probably a bit more similar to Hearts Hibs. But they're two massive cities separated by only, I think it's 11.5 miles. I mean, both of them, when they were in the Premier League, were getting, more than 40,000 every single weekend. I mean, Newcastle still get 50,000 every week. Sunderland in League One are getting 30,000 every week. So, they are huge clubs. You only need to look at the fact that about 7 or 8 years ago, when Newcastle played Sunderland once at St James's Park, one supporter, I think it was a Sunderland supporter, I need to get this right, it might even be Newcastle, I can't remember. One supporter of one of the clubs got so angry and so irate with some of the abuse he was getting from the opposing fans, he decided to take it out on the horse that was stood next to him, and started basically assaulting this horse that was stood next to him, which shows you the kind of mindset that's kind of going through these guys when they go to a game. Now, sadly for them, they're not going to get much of an opportunity to play each other because obviously 2 divisions separate the two. But when I first moved here, Sunderland were on an unbelievable run against Newcastle. I think they won 5 in a row. I remember being to a couple of matches at St James's Park that Sunderland won, one of them 3-0. And it was, I mean, Newcastle as a place was just a shell for about a month afterwards. It's very similar to derbies anywhere. And there is that real bitter rivalry. When they do get back to play each other again, whenever that may be, it's going to be even worse than ever before, you would imagine, due to the fact that there's been such a long gap since the last match.
Just a few quick fire ones. So your answers have been amazing. I've really enjoyed it so far. But just a quick fire. And bearing in mind you've got 110,000 Twitter followers, mainly from the northeast England. I'll ask you this question. What's your favourite, Edinburgh or Newcastle, as Newcastle City? Place to live.
I feel more at home in Newcastle now. Okay. I like Newcastle. I probably like Newcastle better because it's slightly smaller and easier to get around. But Edinburgh still is my home. So I don't know if I've answered that. If you're asking me what I had to choose, I would probably say Newcastle.
Good. Well done for getting that out there. It was just football or golf?
Football, just.
Okay.
The gap is closing significantly.
So as you're getting older.
I know. I prefer to play golf. Yeah. I suppose football's my day job, so I kind of need to say football, don't I?
But it's also your management position as well, is it not? Are you still involved in your amateur team?
I had to chuck that. I chucked that a couple of years ago. It wasn't great. I was basically living in Newcastle for 3 years and driving to Glasgow every single weekend to take a football team. It wasn't good. It wasn't good on the car. It wasn't good on my health. It wasn't really good on anything, to be honest. So that's actually a really good point. Is that since I gave up the football team in Glasgow, I actually feel like I live in Newcastle now, whereas before I felt like I was just existing Monday to Friday and then going back home at the weekend. It's like being at uni in Newcastle and going back home. Whereas since I quit that about 2.5 years ago, I actually feel as though I fully 100% live in Newcastle now, which has allowed me to develop more of a relationship with the place, I think.
Okay. What's the best Premiership interview from a manager or a player that you've ever done?
God, it's so hard to think of one off the top of my head. But whenever I get asked this, it was probably from before my time at Sky. And I had a big sit-down interview with Sir Alex Ferguson when he was Manchester United manager, and that was when I worked up in Scotland, and I travelled down to do it, and we got so much more out of it than I ever thought. And when I ever get asked by students, what's the best interview you've ever done, I tell this story, and the reason I tell it is because of kind of just I've been a little bit pushy. What kind of got us to this amazing interview at the time, and it was I enjoyed it so much, and he enjoyed it so much. Got a letter afterwards thanking us for the interview and saying how much he really enjoyed it, personally signed, and he asked for a copy of the DVD as well. So that was probably the most interesting interview I've ever done. I mean, I've done loads since then, since I've been down here. Probably my favourite player interview was with John Joe Shelby at Newcastle, when he revealed to me how he was having lots of mental health problems and nobody knew about that, and he just basically opened up to me in camera and told me all about it. So obviously not maybe the biggest name in terms of a player, but the story itself was just like it really kind of caught hold at the time.
What a great answer. Last question. Will Scotland, in your opinion, ever reach a major championship finals again?
So I asked Robert Snodgrass an interview doing the exact same thing as you're doing to me the other day there. I asked him the exact same thing, and he said yes without thinking about it. So I'll go with him and say yes. I do think we will. I think our only issue at the moment is we've got good players, but as we all know, they're all in the one position or one or two. But we've got great midfield. We've got 2 or 3 great left backs, and we've got a couple of decent wingers. But I think once we get a couple of defenders in there, yes. I think we're getting closer, and I think we've got the right man in charge in Steve Clarke.
Yeah. Keith, thank you very, very much. That's me done with the questions. I really, really enjoyed it.
No
really insightful. Members of Brunsfield and the people wider will really, really appreciate watching it. If you once all this comes down, you were meant to come to me for a lesson a while ago, but you knackered. So if ever you're up in Edinburgh seeing your mum and dad, just pop over and we'll get a wee chat at Brunsfield. So thank you very much. Everybody that's watched it, I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll get another video out to you as soon as we can. So Keith, take care. Thank you again.
All the best. Cheers.